Hello everyone, this is Zooc and welcome to the newest addition to my channel. This is going to be Zooc Cooks stuff. Why am I doing this? Well, I am a fat fuck. I love food. I love making food. I know a thing or two about making it, so why the hell not? Finally, in like years, I actually have a proper kitchen to work in. So this is going to be quite fun filming all of this crazy shit that I do. Basically, this is going to be aimed towards people that are very new at cooking or know almost nothing about it, mostly guys, because it is indeed the main audience of my channel. So it's always good to educate the motherfuckers, make them know how to do things. It's always good, right? So today I'm going to be making spaghetti with a meat sauce. This is like a take on a classic called spaghetti bolognese. Bolognese, different pronunciations, doesn't really matter. Basically, it's something that's completely different from the shit you find in the can, if you're particularly American, because you guys have a lot of canned stuff that is absolutely disgusting. So the stuff that I'm making today is pretty damn good, much better than the canned meat sauce that you often find in supermarkets. Very simple, and you can always make it for a crowd. You can always increase the quantities. It's very easy to actually know the amounts compared to one another. You know, the ratios of ingredients. So let's get to it, shall we? So basically, what you're gonna need for this recipe is as follows: one medium onion, 3 or 4 or however many you want garlic cloves, and yes, garlic comes already peeled, cause lol America. But back home we don't have already peeled garlic, so peel your own damn garlic. The rest of the stuff is basically a pound of ground beef. Now traditionally bolognese is made with half beef, half pork. But since I don't really like pork in my meat sauce, I prefer full beef. This is like 15% fat, 85% lean, pretty cheap. It's actually really cheap. So this is the kind of food that I used to eat in Sweden a lot when I was alone. I ate this for like a month straight. Very cheap to make, lasts a long time, can be reheated easily, and it's damn delicious. Another thing, bay leaves. I use like 3 of these in the sauce. It's like one of the key ingredients. Really gives it a nice flavor. Some crushed red pepper for a little bit of kick. Always helps. Other than that, you got your salt, pepper. For the tomato sauce, I actually use San Marzano tomatoes. The difference between these and just regular crushed tomatoes or diced tomatoes in a sauce is that these are like the most recommended by most chefs when it comes to making pizza or any sort of tomato sauce. Basically, these are imported from Italy. They are plum tomatoes. They have less acidity and a bit more sweetness than your regular garden tomatoes. But if you're from a country which actually grows tomatoes and they are in season, then use those instead. Go to the market, get your own tomatoes, chop them, dice them, use those if they're in season. If not, they taste like shit, so don't bother. Another ingredient which I use is tomato paste. This is like regular run-of-the-mill tomato paste. You can find it anywhere. I use Hunt's. Hunt's comes in also another variation with basil and some other seasonings. Don't use that shit. Just use regular. It's always good enough. Salt, pepper, olive oil, and one thing which I've recently started using. This is basically pure MSG. MSG is monosodium glutamate. It's something that you find in a lot of natural products. I think mushroom, seaweed. It's a lot of the stuff that Asian cooks use instead of it's called like Chinese salt or Japanese salt. Don't believe the hype where it says that MSG is bad for you or it's toxic or it hurts you. That's bullshit. That was invented so people that make products with no MSG can sell them more easily. It's all a marketing campaign. There's actually zero evidence that MSG actually does you any harm. What it basically does is stimulates the fifth taste, acknowledged by scientists as umami, which is like savoriness, basically. You know, you add it to meat, you add it to stuff with sauces, you know, you can add it to chicken, you can add it to basically anything that is savory in very small quantities. For example, like for a pound of meat, you would use about that for 500 grams of meat, you know, like half a teaspoon or something like that. Not a lot, because a lot then changes the taste and becomes disgusting. If you taste this raw, it actually doesn't taste like anything, but it makes your mouth feel like you've just eaten something very savory. So it's quite an interesting feeling. Also, another thing that I'm going to use is a pound of just regular spaghetti. Don't use angel hair, don't use stuff that's very thin, just regular non-whole wheat, just absolutely common spaghetti. And that's really it. It's a very simple recipe, as I said, but it's meant for beginners and it's meant to feed you, and it's actually quite good. For the finishings, I'm going to use parmesan, as it's pronounced in these here parts. So let's get to chopping an onion. This is something that you learn like first thing in cooking school. not the cooking school I went to, but the regular cooking school, like legit stuff. Basically, chopping an onion is one of the hardest things you can master as a chef. It takes the longest time, but it's actually quite a useful skill because it teaches you basic knife skills. Now, handling a knife, I love knives. This is my own personal knife. It's a global that I bought from in Sweden. It's about 150 bucks. It's really good. It's a Japanese style knife, which basically means, for people that are curious, that the angle that the blade is sharpened at is about 17 degrees compared to the European or North American version of a chef's knife, which is about 25 degrees, 20 to 25 degrees. So this is a much thinner knife. It's actually quite flexible. Yeah, I prefer these to Western style knives. Holding a knife, thing which I see most moms and people who go into cooking mess up. The way you hold a chef's knife is you put your hand here, you put your fingers here, and then you just wrap your other fingers around the handle. Most people hold a knife like this. This is how you hold a steak knife. You know, there are actually rules, there are ways to do this right and wrong. Of course, if it gets the job done, then there's no wrong way to do it. But if there are better ways to do it, then I always go for that. So holding a chef's knife like this, big no, because it can always slip, it can always turn, bend, you can cut your fingers. You know, if you're cutting something, it can always twist like that. Well, if you're holding it like this, that never happens. This is how any self-respecting chefs, let us say, will hold a knife. So just do it this way, trust me. Plus, it makes you look pro. Now, cutting an onion, you will see most people cut this root end. That's actually not the way you do it. It's, well, you can, but there's a more practical way to just cut this end instead. So, make a cut here, throw this shit away, clean your board. What you do then, cut it in half, bam, easy. And now you have to peel the first layer because it's the one that contains the skin. Sometimes it contains a bit of a tougher skin, so just peel it back. Don't rip it all the way, keep it that way, right? And now you have half an onion, congratulations, amazing. Peel the other one is in the same manner, and you will have your onion ready to be chopped. How do you finally dice an onion? Sorry, I said chopped, I meant dice. There's actually a difference. To finally dice an onion, you do the following. You hold it like this, take your knife, clean it first because it has shit on it. Make 2 horizontal cuts, right? 1, 2. That's it. Now it's sectioned in 3 pieces. Now you turn around and you make very thin slices vertically. Hold your hand like this, tuck your thumb inside. Never do it like this, like I see my mom doing it all the time. With holding a knife like this, cutting like that, it makes me cringe, seriously. It's so bad. Don't do it. Just hold any product that you hold it like this. Because your knuckles will guide the cutting hand, and there's no chance of your thumb flying off into the sauce. So just do it this way, right? So I made 3 cuts. Now I'm going to start making vertical cuts. That's it. Now you turn it around again, and you make vertical cuts this way. Very easy. Make your hand go into a circular motion where you're cutting. Don't like slam the knife because it'll bend the actual blade. So just a gentle circular motion and you'll have finely diced onion, right? Pretty simple. This actually takes, when you go to cooking school, they make you practice this stuff like hours on end until you get a perfectly fine dice, like an actual perfect dice. Because apparently, not apparently, it's pretty clear. If you cut onion in bigger chunks and smaller chunks, then it'll not cook at the same time, and you'll have big chunks of onion in your food, and that's never nice. Especially since there are actual people who don't like onion, despite it being one of the most common ingredients. So, gonna cut this one in the same manner. Don't go crazy with speed from the beginning. I do it because I've cut like a bajillion onions so far. But just take it slow and get used to the motions. See? Just really easy. Also, I use a very sharp knife. I sharpen my knives like regularly on something called water stone, which is basically a Japanese stone that you keep in water. It has different grits for different degrees of finesse, so to say. I'm actually going to show it to you now. This is a Japanese water stone. This is a 6,000 grit. 1,000, 6,000. Basically, you form an edge on this one and you polish it on this one. And it brings it to basically razor sharpness. That's pretty much it. Now, the garlic, I would show you how to actually peel a garlic clove, but that's not necessary considering it already comes peeled. I like my garlic. I come from Romania where people eat a lot of garlic in pretty much everything except desserts. Americans don't really have the whole garlic culture going on, but I like to use a lot, so I'm going to use about 4 cloves. No crazy knife tricks here, just a garlic press. Let's put 2 in there. Keep them separate. Don't mix them because garlic burns much easier than onion. Garlic is about 50% sugar or 50% like carb, so it burns much easier than an onion would, which is mostly water, really. So keep them separate. Cook them separately most of the time. That's always good. This garlic press is actually a piece of shit. But we deal with what we have. That's 4 cloves of garlic. That's more than enough. Just clean this shit off and that'll be fine. Alright. That's basically it for the prep. There's really nothing else. So let's get on to the actual cooking and the theory behind it. When it comes to pots, I like to use this large pan because it has a large surface area, so it allows for more juice to evaporate from the tomato sauce once you put it in. It's okay to heat a pan when it's on its own, unless it's Teflon. If it's Teflon, don't heat it up. But if it's stainless steel, crank it up. Just heat it without any oil in it. Don't put oil in it from the beginning. Just heat it on its own. You will hear the term browning meat a lot if you ever watch cooking shows. Basically what that means, this was a myth that started back somewhere in the 70s or 80s or maybe even earlier, where it says that browning meat seals in the juices. It doesn't actually seal in shit. What it does is produces a reaction called the Maillard reaction, which is basically a caramelization of the carbohydrates and the protein in the meat. And what that does is give it the brown crust and the nice taste that meat has. So once the pan's heated up, I'm just going to put in some olive oil. It's okay to be a bit generous with it. There's no problem there. Actually, I'm going to put in even a bit more because the meat soaks it up, and so I don't want it to get too dry. Alright, over there I have my pasta water boiling. I put it on the boil beforehand. It's a big pot with a lot of water. You want that for pasta in general. You don't crowd pasta in a little bit of water. That's never good. So what I'm going to do is I have here my 1 pound of beef. I'm actually not going to brown the whole thing because if you put a lot of beef in a cold beef in a hot pan, what it does, it decreases the temperature of the pan, and so it just stews, it just boils. So what I want is to brown the meat. But if you put in like the whole thing, then it won't brown. So I'm just going to put in half. Basically, a wooden spoon is like the best tool you can have in the kitchen. Thousands of years old and still just as useful. So throw in half the meat in there. Break it up real quick. It's going to sizzle, as you can probably hear. That's a good thing if it sizzles. It's going to stick to the bottom. That's not a problem. You can get the brown bits off the bottom later with the tomato sauce. So just break it up with a wooden spoon. Just keep the other half there. It's fine. Just break it up into tiny bits. So once you break it up, you just sort of leave it alone. You don't move it around a lot. Leave it alone for like a couple of minutes until it actually gets a crust on one side, and then you can stir in the other stuff, which I'll show you in a second. This beef has been in the fridge for a while, so it's kind of homogenized together. It's not as fresh as it used to be, but it's still edible. Of course, it's not expired or anything because I mean we're gonna eat it for dinner tonight, so it's all good. So once the beef is broken up, I know it looks like very little beef for this wide a pan, but this is kind of how you want to do it because see, it already the temperature went down and it started stewing. It doesn't sizzle anymore, so now it's starting to actually let go of its water content, and it boils. But this is less water than if I had put in the whole thing, and so it'll take less time to actually evaporate the water and brown the meat. So just leave it like that. In the meantime, I'm going to take care of the pasta water. Basically, for boiling any sort of pasta, fresh or dry, you want a lot of salt in the water because pasta is kind of tasteless on its own. Pasta dough is basically egg, flour, and that's pretty much it, really. Egg and flour. So it doesn't taste like much. So for boiling about a pound of pasta, you want, I don't know how many, maybe 2 gallons of water or 1 gallon of water or 3 quarts, something like that, and a whole lot of salt. What I'm going to use is about, I would say this much works fine. A lot of it is always good. Never, doesn't hurt at all. water has to be super salty. So just throw it in there. This meat is still stewing in its own juices here, but it's starting to smell, you know, it's starting to smell like fried meat, so it's good. What I'm doing is the meat first, and then I'm gonna do the veggies. I know it's common to actually um, start with the onion first and then add the meat, but I don't really need to fry onion for this dish. I just need the onion to sort of stew and dissolve and just impart its flavor, and that's about it. So the meat is still going at it. This is gonna take a few minutes, but in the meantime, I'm just gonna do absolutely nothing. Haha, bet you thought I was gonna say something interesting. Nah, fuck that. So what can I say? What have I been doing in America? Well, I've sampled a few restaurants that I haven't had yet, which were quite interesting. I had some really good chicken tikka masala. I usually actually don't have a lot of experience with Indian, but tikka masala is, I know I like it because I've had it a long time ago. And this particular restaurant here in Charlotte, which is newly opened, has some pretty good tikka. Other than that, I just had basic Americana, nothing really out of the ordinary. But what I do like is sushi, though. Like the American version of sushi is basically California roll, which was it's a it's a made-up sushi. It's not really sushi because it doesn't contain any raw fish. The way it's made is with crab sticks, like ready cooked crab sticks, cucumber, avocado, all rolled in seaweed, and then rice, and that's basically it. But I could eat like 40 of those, and I do believe I have at one point or another. If you want to speed up the evaporation of water, oh, it's starting to sizzle again. That's a good sign. You can actually, where's the salt? Throw some salt on the meat as soon as you put it in the pan. That'll draw out the moisture and evaporate it faster. Not a lot, just a little bit, like a pinch. That's basically it. This was actually supposed to be a two-man operation. Jenna was supposed to help me, but she's a bit down today, kind of resting. So I'm handling the whole camera work and everything myself. So I apologize for the shitty lighting. I know this kitchen doesn't have the best lighting. This thing is actually black, so it doesn't reflect any light at all. So I'm hoping you can see what stuff looks like. The video is in 1080p, so watch it in that. It's always recommended. So now the meat is sizzling again, which means that the water is almost gone. That's always nice. It's starting to smell pretty good. My pasta water is boiling here. I'm just going to stir in the salt to make sure it's dissolved. This can boil on forever until the sauce is ready. Like basically, you never want to boil pasta first and then make the sauce. It's always good to have the sauce ready made because this can just be kept warm. It won't really damage it at all. Quite the opposite. Like if the sauce, the more times it spends on the burner, the better it gets because the flavors melt together better. But the difference between my version and the classic bolognese is that one actually takes about 2 hours, maybe 3, to make, and this is a very quick sauce. It takes less than an hour for the whole thing to be ready. So you know, that one also has like celery, carrots in it. This one doesn't have any of that. It just has the onion and garlic. It has a bit less garlic. It also has red wine. So I'm sure it's good. But this is my mom's recipe. This is kind of what I grew up with in terms of spaghetti with meat sauce. So I've always liked it, and every person that I've given it to has commended me on the recipe. So there's no reason to change. It doesn't have to be, you know, identical to a traditional recipe. Like I'm sure that people ate some pretty weird shit when stuff was invented. Doesn't mean you have to use, you know, a buffalo head in the sauce. If the original recipe calls for it, you can just substitute maybe some nice ground beef, or you know, maybe a little bit of pork. Who knows? So this whole traditionalism in terms of respecting the recipe, you know, the terms for foods change as you change countries. Like in some parts you have Hitler fried chicken, like Thailand. It doesn't mean that you know it has to be identical to KFC or anything like that. So the meat is kind of ready. What I'm going to do now is just add the onion and garlic. I know I said don't mix them, but in this case it's fine because the garlic isn't actually frying. It's the onion's gonna let off a lot of moisture as well, so there is no risk of burning the garlic. As I said, the garlic is like contains a lot of sugar. Sugar not in, you know, the sugar you put in your coffee, but in carbohydrate form and raw form. So sugar burns when it's exposed to heat. You don't want garlic to burn because it imparts a really bitter, sort of nasty taste. So the onion is sizzling with the meat here, stinking up the whole house. It's always nice having an open kitchen right towards the living room. All the garlic fumes and the onion fumes are going upstairs towards Total Biscuit's nose. I'm sure he loves that, especially since he hates onion, but I don't even know how that's possible, but apparently it is. So, just mixing all of this up. The pan is on medium-high heat, actually, and that's fine. I usually cook this on a single temperature. It's not a big deal. Maybe put it down to a simmer once the sauce is ready, and I'm just waiting on the pasta. But for cooking the meat and everything, medium-high is just fine. So once the onion and garlic has like a minute time to heat up, I'm just gonna add the rest of the meat. There's no reason to wait. This one isn't gonna brown obviously at all. It's just gonna sort of stew again. So I'm just breaking it up. It's definitely not gonna be raw by the time the sauce is over because it's gonna simmer for about 20 minutes while everything else gets done. So it's quite alright. I mean, you can basically put this on a low simmer, just like go take a shower, watch your series. It's really not a problem with it. If it's a Teflon pan that you're using, then you basically have no worries whatsoever because it's not gonna burn. It's not gonna stick. It's not gonna do anything. It's just gonna sit there and develop some nice mellow flavors. So it's all good, boys. Don't worry. Just breaking the meat up, and after I break it up, it's taking a bit. This meat is like very gluey. While this is happening, obviously the onion is still cooking. You don't want pieces of onion in spaghetti because not only because of the aesthetic, but just because of the mouthfeel. Like it has to have a certain texture. Also, if you put all the meat in at once, it'll all be sort of mushy. While if you put in half the meat, like I did, and then the other half, one part will be soft, and one part will have a little more crunchiness from the browning. So you get a little bit of different texture there. It's always nice to mix, not make it boring, you know. Also break it up really fine so you don't get like big chunks of meat in the sauce. It's not very pleasant, especially since the interior of those big chunks will not contain any of the good stuff. So just break it up really fine. What I'm going to do immediately is add just a tablespoon or so of tomato paste straight to the meat. Tomato paste is basically one of the key flavoring agents. It also contains kind of like MSG, which stimulates the fifth taste we have. So this and mushrooms are always used as an actual flavoring agent, not as just a pure ingredient, right? So you add it for extra mouthfeel, not just for the actual taste of tomato, but obviously, you know, tomato paste has a nice taste once the raw tomato flavor is cooked out. So that's what I'm doing now. Just mixing it with the meat so it doesn't actually taste like the nasty bitter raw tomato taste that it usually has. So this is just the sizzling has gone down now. Lots of moisture is being released, of course. So just keep going at it, stir. Don't let it stick now. Don't let it burn. There's nothing really to burn, but you never know. People go crazy. Oh, people actually have some pretty cheap pots, which actually do burn. I've had some pretty bad experiences in cooking at other people's homes. They have these really thin bottom pots. If you check this one out, it actually has a pretty thick bottom. I don't know if you can see. But yeah, the line here delimitates the bottom, so it's about centimeter thick, which is good because it retains heat and it doesn't burn. You know, some people buy these really cheap pans because they don't really know how to cook. They don't really know it's like buying a car and not knowing anything, and having been raised in the jungle and buying a car. Like, what the fuck do you know about it? So pans always is good to have a thick bottom. So it retains the heat and it sort of doesn't let it like all come up at the same time. It disperses it uniformly, so you don't get burns and nastiness. All right, let's see. What I'm going to do next is just add a couple of bay leaves, maybe 3, because I'm putting in a bit more tomato sauce today, since it's more people to feed. So just put them in the meat there. These will get taken out later. You don't want to chew on these because they're pretty hard. everyone has bay leaves, so it's not really a very rare ingredient. Just mix it up a bit. Condiments and spices in general are fat soluble, not water soluble. So stuff like paprika, spices, they dissolve in fat. The volatile oils that they contain get dispersed better in fat. In water, they don't really do anything. So whenever you have the opportunity to use spices, use them with something fatty, like meat or bacon fat or butter or whatever. Don't just add them like in a soup. Fry them up with the meat if you're making something with chicken in it. So the chicken fat actually promotes the release of flavor better. All right. Gonna add some crushed red pepper, just like a couple of pinches. This is a new thing. I don't usually use the crushed red pepper because it's a bit hard to find at home, from what I've noticed. But over here it's pretty easy. So just like 3 pinches and that's it. Mix it all up. Next up, I'm just gonna add a bit of salt. I don't really use like precise measurements because I don't know. I just don't for this particular dish. For others, I do. So basically, like maybe 2 pinches. It's gonna have a lot of tomato sauce, so that needs salt, definitely. I'm also gonna add a bit of MSG. Now you don't have to use this. I've never have used this before in this dish because I just bought the thing. But I'm trying new things out, so if you don't have it, it's fine. It's not a problem whatsoever. So just 1 pinch. About half a teaspoon for this entire thing will be fine. This actually contains less salt than salt, so it's more for stimulating the umami taste, as I previously mentioned, more than giving it saltiness, Just stir that in. It's starting to sizzle again, which means the moisture is running out, which basically means that I have to add the tomato sauce pretty damn soon. Else, stuff's gonna start to stick. That's never good. Alright, next thing I'm gonna add is pepper, of course. Just, however much you want, doesn't really matter. A few sprinkles here and there. I like my pepper, so I just add a bit more. And that's it. Next up, just pour in the tomato sauce. Let's open this motherfucker up. Yep. This is a 28 ounce can, basically 900 grams or so. Just put the whole thing in. Most of the juice is just going to evaporate, and it's going to leave the nice chunky tomato bits in there, which are going to soften as well, so they're not really going to be very pronounced in the final sauce. Now the sizzling has gone down. This is actually a bit too little, if I do say so myself. I might add a little more water. I'll actually just add some of the pasta water, because this actually has to simmer for a little bit, and I'm afraid there's going to be not much left. So yeah, these are very chunky tomatoes by the looks of it, not really small dice as what I'm used to. Just you got to look at things and see, do they look good? Do they look appetizing? This one doesn't actually look that appetizing right now, so I'm going to add a bit more tomato paste just for color. Maybe like half a tablespoon or so. Just mix it in there. This will simmer for about 20 minutes or so. You don't really need more than that, just until the meat softens. But one key ingredient which I'm going to add, which I've never actually seen anyone else add, is, and I'm going to get flamed for this, but trust me, it's good. Let's see, where is it? Just your regular tomato ketchup. Believe it or not, this actually does wonders for the sauce, and it's what my mom has always used. Just, I can't really measure it, just go by feel. This is like 1 tablespoon maybe. Let's go for 1.5 tablespoons for now. Just mix that in there. It'll give it nice color. This is also another flavoring agent. It also contains the same thing that I mentioned. Ketchup is very popular with sauces, like barbecue sauce and everything. It's definitely used a lot, so it's fine if you do use it. I can't eat the sauce without it personally, so I don't know about you. But if you ever do make this sauce, do use ketchup. Trust me, it works. Works just fine. So what I'm going to do now is just have a taste and see what the fuck I've just made here. I might have completely failed on this, but we'll see. Oh, oh wow. Yeah, that's pretty damn good actually. Has a bit of it's definitely salty enough. Has all the spiciness you want from the crushed red pepper. So what you do with this is just put it down to, where the fuck is the burner control? Put it down to like medium low and just let it simmer. Feel free to add some more tomato juice if you want. Definitely has enough ketchup for now, I think. Let's see if they actually have tomato juice in this place. I'm still not really accustomed to what's in this kitchen. Doesn't look like it. Oh well. Guess we can do without. What you can do is just rinse the can with some water, which I'm actually gonna do now, and pour the rest of the juices in. Just a little bit of water. Rinse out the can. Let's pour all this stuff in. Basically, this is like ready now, but if you want to make it better, just let it simmer more, and it'll get better. So what I'm gonna do now is go have a smoke, let the sauce simmer, come back, do the pasta. That's another 8 or 9 minutes with the pasta, and it's gonna probably be pretty good by the time I'm done. So I'll be right back. Right, I'm back. The sauce has come to a simmer, as you can see. Nothing is sticking, which is good. It's still a bit watery, so it does have to evaporate a little bit more. Maybe I'll turn it up a bit to like medium. That should be fine. Now I'm gonna put in my pasta. Now the way I've seen people do it, let's see if I can actually not make a mess on the floor. Yeah, I made a mess. Well, fuck it, I'll clean it up later. Fuck off. Alright. Basically, you take your pasta, twist it a little bit, dump it in the water, so it like naturally covers the whole thing. Then you take your wooden spoon and just push it down as it softens. Now, my mom always pisses me off because she follows pack directions. I never follow pack directions because people making packages, you know, they have to write something there, but it doesn't mean that they're actually right about what they're saying. Most of the time, even in this case, yeah, directions say, let's see. This is Barilla pasta, by the way, really common, not a big deal. Yeah, this says like 10 to 11 minutes, I believe it said somewhere. Alright, 10 minutes. Yeah, that's usually more than you need for pasta. What you want to do is cook it al dente. This term gets thrown around a lot, but that's how I prefer my pasta, and that's how it should be cooked, because it's much better in terms of texture. Al dente basically means to the tooth, so it has to have a little bite to it, but don't overdo it and make it too hard. Basically, about 8 minutes in, you check on your pasta, you pick one up, and you actually just eat it. And if you feel the chalky center, it's going to have like a thin chalky center. If that exists, then it needs like a couple of minutes more. Basically, once you can bite into it and it doesn't have any hard bits, but you can feel when you bite into it, like it's not mushy, then it's basically ready. You have to drain it immediately. You can't leave it in the water because it'll continue cooking and soften up, so just drain it. If your sauce isn't ready by that time, pour a little bit of oil on top of it after you've drained it. Just mix it around so it doesn't stick to each other. This is basically carbohydrate. Carbohydrate is very sticky, and you don't want that. So some people will say put oil in the water. That's fucking retarded. That doesn't actually do anything. Not with this kind of pasta, not with dry pasta. It just floats on top of the water. Oh, you put oil in the water so it doesn't stick. You know, I've heard people say, even on like professional chefs on TV shows, which is like ridiculous. No, you don't put any fucking oil in the water. Just leave the water alone. Cook the pasta and it won't stick. I've never actually seen pasta stick in the water, so I don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's fine if you use the same spoon for this. I mean, it doesn't affect anything. So, you know, when you boil pasta, you don't actually have to leave it on max. You can just put it on. Once it starts boiling, you just put it on simmer. See, now I'm burn myself. It's on medium low now, so that should be fine. Sauce is still simmering here. Evaporating the water, getting a bit of color. Bay leaves are doing their trick. I'm gonna taste this again because I just want to make sure that I'm not like biased or anything. No, I'm definitely not biased. This thing is fucking good. I can actually feel the MSG working because I tasted MSG raw and it's like kind of disgusting. But when you put it in something, you can definitely tell the difference. I am all for cooking with MSG. Back home we have this powder called Vegeta or Delicat or you know, the Knorr cubes, the bouillon cubes, or the Maggi cubes. Some people think that cooking with those is like a cheat, but it's actually really not, because considering how bad ingredients are nowadays, most of the time, if you go buy supermarket tomatoes and you make a tomato sauce, they're gonna taste like nothing, because those are basically like unripened tomatoes, artificially ripened, so they haven't actually had time to develop the sweetness that tomatoes are supposed to have. That's what I said. If, for example, I know back home when tomatoes are in season and we actually buy Romanian tomatoes from the peasants, those are delicious. Like, they're so sweet and good, you can just eat them as is. But most of the time, for the rest of the year, if you buy tomatoes from the supermarket, they taste like nothing. And I know, like, Americans, that's what they're used to because they don't really have, like, very good vegetables. Most of them are just huge, filled with whatever health substances that they use. So I actually had some raw tomatoes from the supermarket here, and they they indeed taste like basically nothing. So MSG helps a lot with that, and the cubes, the bouillon cubes, help a lot with, you know, bringing a bit more flavor to the table, which is what you're supposed to have in the first place. A lot of these traditional dishes are based on old peasant dishes, back when people didn't actually have any artificial, you know, insecticides or hormones or anything like that. So the stuff was grown on the field, picked, and made into food. So you didn't actually need a lot of stuff to add to it. It tasted basically perfectly fine on its own. So this is why, like, all of these artificial flavor enhancers appeared, just because the produce just got worse and worse. So it's just a way of compensating. But I mean, sure, some of this is harmful, but to be honest, we eat it so much that it doesn't actually do anything. I hear a lot of people say, like, "Oh, it has E's, it has this and that." Like, you're just speaking out of ignorance, because some of those E's are actually not damaging. Just because they're called E's doesn't mean they actually do anything to you. Same with MSG. People started like this huge campaign with no MSG products. MSG gives cancer. No, it does not. It doesn't do jack. MSG isn't like seaweed, and people, you know, in Asia have been eating it for I don't know how many thousands of years. You don't see them getting cancer. Actually, it's the white people that get more cancer than anyone. So, whatevs. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the popular beliefs are actually wrong about food. So it's a shame, because people believe everything they hear. But if you actually read up on it, then you'll discover that a lot of the stuff is false information. And it's only um, popularized as a means to sell products that have the colorful packaging, which says, "Oh yeah, it doesn't contain MSG. Buy this. Doesn't contain this and that, like E's and whatever." But some of it is actually perfectly fine for you. Doesn't do fuck all. The pasta's softening up. I don't know how long it's been. It's still hard though. It's limpy. I'm just gonna check it. Yep, it still has the chalky center, so it's a no-go for now. Never want chalky pasta. Now let's talk about finishing this up, because I'm actually not gonna show you a plate of it finished, because it's pointless. What's the point? It's just pasta plus sauce. But I love Parmesan. Let's see, where the hell did I put it? Alright. Now the way they do it in some restaurants, including one I've worked in, is they actually use parm shavings. If you actually do decide to buy parm, never buy already shaven stuff, because that contains a lot of anti-caking agents, such as cornstarch, stuff that's sprayed on it so it doesn't stick, it doesn't clump, and that's actually pretty shitty. I mean, I don't want that in my food, right? Unless I'm actively putting it in there. So, if you're gonna buy parm, buy a chunk. And you know, grating it is fine if you want to mix it in, but for decoration purposes or for finishing cleaning up, I actually just grab a vegetable peeler and peel off shavings. These are better because you get the final. Oops, just dropped one. Fuck it. You get the final crunch. You know, Parmesan has a little bit of crunch to it. So if you get that in your dish, it just adds a little bit of extra texture. And Parmesan being salty and having that pretty awesome cheese taste, it's a welcome addition. So just shave a little of your shavings and just sprinkle them on top at the end. You can put some grated one in the sauce if you want. but you don't have to always just grate it. You know, you can play with it. I prefer shavings myself for a while now. For a couple of years I've actually been using shavings. I just think they're better. So, sauce is thickening up. If you want it extra thick, what you can do is add a bit of flour to it. So it kind of coagulates. It's not as watery. But to be honest, the pasta is going to absorb most of the water, most of the sauce water, which is good water, once you remove it. So you're just going to get the chunky bits at the end, so it's good. I mean, you don't have to. But it can be done. Whenever something's too watery, just add a bit of flour to it and mix it in. Actually, flour plus water, really. Mix it in and it'll thicken up the sauce. It doesn't actually damage anything or reduce its taste, so it's a perfectly fine technique. I prefer cornstarch myself. It's what Asians use as well. You mix the cornstarch with a little bit of cold water. It has to be cold water. And then you pour it in whatever you're doing. Thickens up within seconds. It's really good. So you can just do that. Let's check on the pasta again. Right. This is actually ready, surprisingly enough. I don't know how long it's been. Definitely less than 10 minutes, I think. So I'm just gonna leave it for maybe 10 seconds just to make sure that I didn't grab one that was cooked better than the rest. I'm gonna turn my sauce thing off because I don't want it to evaporate anymore. That's basically it for now. Just turn this off and leave it. The heat from the burner will keep it simmering anyway, so it'll still keep cooking. Once you're done, throw the water away, put the sauce in, mix the pasta. You could even like grate some parm into it, just to make stuff stick. Parm will melt and it'll make the meat stick to the spaghetti. Plate it, put some shavings on it. That's it. You're done. You got a delicious, easy. Probably took about 40 minutes in total. Pasta with meat sauce, and I guarantee you that it's impossible that anyone will actually dislike this. At least from my experience. I don't know. People have different tastes, but I like this one a lot, and it's definitely simpler, much more simple to do than traditional bolognese. So just give it a try. Anyone that's not a complete moron can actually cook this. So I recommend that you try it, even if you're clueless. Just look for the visual cues, really. Taste it as you go along. If you think it needs something extra, just add it. If you think it needs oregano or any sort of crazy Italian spices, I personally don't think it does. It doesn't all have to be Italian. Just add that. And that's it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please rate that shit if you enjoyed it. Let me know if you want some more of this. This is just an experiment. First episode is a pilot. And if you do want, then there will be many, many more, as I have great plans for this kitchen. I'm going to tear this shit up here. It's America. They have everything. It's a lot of stuff that I don't have back home, so it's cool. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a good week or day or whatever. Bye-bye.